questioning the neat and tidy theories of the world. We'll see you next time.
You know, when you look at those really old, centuries-old maps of the world, there's always this incredible tension on the parchment.
Yeah, like the sea monsters and all that.
Right, exactly. You have these areas that are meticulously charted. Every single coastline, every port is just totally filled in with ink.
Yeah.
But then right at the edges, you have these massive, terrifying blank spaces. The spots where the map maker just wrote, here be dragons.
Which is such a great phrase.
It is. And for the longest time, the history of human scientific discovery really felt like that, like the process of sailing into those blank spaces. We had these explorers, these individual thinkers just sailing out into the philosophical dark, right? Bringing back new physics, new biology.
New paradigms, yeah.
Right. But looking at the landscape of modern science today, and, well, specifically the way we talk about artificial intelligence, it feels like we've just stopped looking at the horizon completely.
We've definitely pulled back.
Yeah, it's almost as if we've decided to sit in this windowless room staring at the exact same map we've already drawn, and we're just using a magnifying glass to count the ink dots.
And somehow convincing ourselves that counting the dots faster means we're exploring.
Yes, exactly. Which brings us to our mission for today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are doing a very detailed, strictly academic breakdown of a specific chapter from our source material today, Chapter 18.
Titled The End of Science, with a question mark.
Right. And to be clear to you listening, this isn't going to be some high-level, breezy summary. We are mapping out the actual philosophical architecture of how we think about AI, human ingenuity, and the future of discovery.
Which is, it's pretty heavy stuff, honestly.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I want to start with this incredibly stark quote from the tech entrepreneur Peter Thiel. He pointed out pretty bluntly that innovations seem to be drying up, not accelerating.
Yeah, which is, that's the supreme irony of the water we're swimming in right now.
Exactly, because we are constantly told, practically yelled at every day, that we are on the verge of AGI, artificial general intelligence.
We're supposedly, touching the hem of this super intelligent machine god.
Right. But at that exact same moment, human scientific innovation, like truly disruptive, paradigm-shifting ideas, appears to just be stalling out.
It forces a really uncomfortable dichotomy.
Yep.
The core question of this chapter is exactly that. If we're supposedly building machines that can outthink us, this should be the most explosively innovative era ever.
But it's not.
No, it's not. We haven't seen a massive, universe-redefining shift in the fundamental laws of physics or biology in decades. So we're left with two pretty unsettling possibilities here.
Lay them out for us.
Either we're experiencing what the text calls a derangement of the culture, meaning we've structured our society to actively stifle new ideas, or we're just out of ideas.
Just totally tapped out.
Yeah, like the physical universe only has a finite number of fundamental laws, and, well, maybe we already found all the big ones.
A deranged culture or the absolute end of the road. Neither of those is particularly warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, not at all.
But, okay, let's start with the first one. To figure out if our culture has become deranged, we can't just look at today's Silicon Valley, right? We actually have to go back to the mid-20th century.
Yeah, we have to trace the architecture of this problem back to the transition from the individual genius to the industrial machine.
Which is fascinating, because when I think of mid-20th century science, I just think of these massive triumphs. Splitting the atom, the Apollo missions.
Sure, those are massive triumphs, but they represent a structural pivot in how we actually conduct inquiry.
Yeah.
So you look at the early 1950s. You've got Alan Turing on one hand, formally defining computation, dreaming about human-level AI.
The classic AI pioneer.
Exactly. But right alongside him, you have Norbert Wiener. He was this brilliant MIT mathematician, basically the founder of cybernetics. And Wiener was looking at that exact same technological landscape, but he was seeing basically a creeping nightmare.
Really? What was he worried about?
Well, in the early 50s, he was working on this unpublished manuscript called Invention, the Care and Feeding of Ideas. And he started warning about something he termed megabuck science.
Megabuck science. I hear that and I just immediately think of, corporate greed taking over the lab.
It's easy to jump there, but it's actually more about the methodology of discovery than just the money.
Okay. How so?
Before World War II, major breakthroughs usually came from individuals or tiny independent teams. Einstein working in a patent office, conceptualizing relativity.
Right, the lone genius model.
Yeah, but the massive mobilization of the war birthed a new model, The Manhattan Project, the post-war stuff at Bell Labs,
Yeah.
IBM, DoD projects. These things required standardization, heavy bureaucracy.
Massive budgets, strict project managers.
Exactly. And Wiener realized this megabuck science model was shifting the focus away from curiosity-driven research. It was moving toward controlled industrial research. And he argued this was driven by a fundamental distrust of the individual.
A distrust of the individual? Because a massive bureaucracy just needs predictability, right?
If you're managing $1 billion grant, you can't just bet on some eccentric person with a wild hypothesis that might take 20 years to pan out. You need statistical certainty.
You need your quarterly progress reports.
Yeah, you need measurable output. So Wiener diagnosed this exact trend as anti-human because it's inherently hostile to the unpredictable idiosyncratic spark of actual human intellect.
Which is wild because if you demand that every scientific project be statistically guaranteed to yield a result, you are basically outlawing the very mechanism that makes new ideas.
Because a truly new idea is an outlier.
Exactly. It doesn't fit the current statistical model by definition. It's like, okay, this is a bit outside of science, but it totally reminds me of the modern Hollywood studio system.
Oh, interesting. How does studio system mirror megabuck science?
Well, look at how a major film studio operates today versus, say, the auteur era in the 70s. Today, a massive studio does not want to fund a weird, unpredictable indie director with a singular vision.
Because it's a huge financial risk.
Right. They want guaranteed blockbuster sequels. They want cinematic universes. So they industrialize the creative process. They use algorithms to analyze market demographics. They, A/B test the movie posters.
They write scripts by committee.
Exactly, to maximize four-quadrant appeal. And by doing that, they completely freeze out the individual who might actually invent a brand new genre of film. The culture becomes anti-intellectual because it demands predictable scale over unpredictable genius.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
They want a machine that prints money, not a messy human taking a creative leap in the dark.
Right.
And that dynamic is where the modern mythology of AI becomes so incredibly dangerous.
How so?
Well, the AI myth, this pervasive narrative that superintelligent machines are just inevitably going to rise up and replace human cognition, it acts as the ultimate accelerant for this anti-humanism.
Oh, because it gives the bureaucracy an alibi.
Exactly. If the culture already distrusts the messy individual and prefers the industrial machine, the AI myth just comes along and says, hey, don't worry, the machines are destined to be the real thinkers anyway.
Wow. So it validates the entire shift? Like, why even bother investing in the slow care and feeding of human ideas if a supercomputer is just going to do it for us in 10 years?
Right. It makes any concern over anti-human bias seem totally irrelevant because anti-humanism just gets framed as the inevitable march of progress.
But wait, that's a brutal paradox, because if we're ever going to actually figure out general intelligence, wouldn't that require a massive paradigm-shifting leap of human genius?
Yes, it would require a new Einstein. But by structuring our institutions around predictable, data-driven outputs, we're actively destroying the exact culture that could produce that leap.
We're literally starving the human minds required to build the thing we keep saying is inevitable.
That's exactly it.
We're burning down the library to power the server farm.
That's a great way to put it.
But, okay, this leads me to a pretty cynical follow-the-money type question.
Yeah.
If valuing individual human intellect is clearly the better path for generating truly new ideas, why did everyone abandon it so eagerly?
I mean, you don't need a conspiracy theory for that. You just need a spreadsheet.
It's the economics.
It's the ruthless economics of big data. The current trajectory of AI isn't driven by some pure philosophical quest to understand consciousness. It's driven by Google, Meta, massive VC firms.
Nice.
And in the realm of big data AI, the economic reality is terrifyingly simple. The system always works better for whoever owns the most data, period. The game is entirely about volume.
So the fix is in.
The fix is in. The barrier to entry is so high that genuine garage-level innovation is effectively locked out. Wiener pointed out this financial truth about deep innovation. Early bets on truly revolutionary ideas are almost always bad bets in the short term.
Because if it's genuinely new, you have no historical market data to prove it's going to make money next quarter.
Exactly. The full value might not be apparent for decades. So supporting a genuine culture of ideas means tolerating massive uncertainty.
Which is the exact opposite of how a publicly traded tech company operates. They live and die by the quarterly profit curve.
Right. So capital flows strictly toward narrow applications with immediate returns. optimizing ad clicks, mastering a video game to get good PR and boost the stock price,
They're just squeezing profits out of the low-hanging fruit.
while spinning the mythology of AGI to keep investors hypnotized. It's an economic model that mathematically guarantees disillusionment because it prevents the actual conceptual innovation it relies on for its own myth.
It's just a spectacular sleight of hand. And, there's a literary reference in the source material that perfectly captures this absurdity from Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's
Oh,
Travels.
the voyage to Laputa. Wiener loved this comparison.
Yeah. For those of you listening who haven't read it, Laputa is this flying island where the scientists are just entirely disconnected from practical reality.
Right. And in Swift's satire, these scientists build this massive wooden machine filled with blocks that have all the words of their language on them. And they just manually turn cranks to randomly rearrange the blocks.
And the students just write down whatever random combinations happen to form a sentence.
Exactly. And the inventor of this thing boasts that now anyone can write books of philosophy or poetry without needing the least assistance from actual genius or study.
It's the dream of a machine that evolves science automatically, just through sheer random permutation.
It's the ultimate takedown of mindless data crunching. And the alarming part is how seamlessly this maps onto modern scientific endeavors. Look at Henry Markram's Blue Brain Project, which turned into the billion-euro Human Brain Project.
Right, the text calls that out specifically.
Markram's proposal was essentially a modern Laputan machine. He proposed taking €1 billion and massive supercomputers to just simulate the human brain from the bottom up, neuron by neuron.
Relying purely on existing theories, right?
Right. The fantasy was that if you just pile up enough silicon and enough data points, the emergent property of general intelligence will just spontaneously assemble itself.
Treating intelligence like it's just a byproduct of computational scale. Which brings us to what Wiener called the monkeys in the typewriter fallacy.
The old idea that infinite monkeys on infinite typewriters will eventually write Shakespeare.
Exactly. But Wiener dismantled this.
He did. He explained that you cannot obtain new ideas of real significance just by multiplying low-grade human activity, or by fortuitously rearranging existing data with a machine. Even if the Laputa machine accidentally spits out easy sod, the machine doesn't know it's important.
Right.
You absolutely require a first-rate human mind to select it, conceptualize it, and understand its significance. The machine cannot replace comprehension.
Okay, but I have to jump in here and play devil's advocate for the listener because I can hear the AI enthusiasts screaming through their headphones right now.
Let's hear it.
They would point to the absolute explosion of capabilities in large language models over the last couple of years and say, wait a minute, you're talking about old limitations. Couldn't the sheer scale of modern deep learning eventually create that emergent property?
The quantity becomes quality argument.
Yes. If you throw enough compute power, enough billions of parameters, and literally the entire text of the internet at a neural network, doesn't it eventually cross a threshold? If the Laputa machine spins fast enough, doesn't it eventually write a new law of physics?
It is the most pervasive defense of the current AI trajectory, but it fundamentally misunderstands the mathematical architecture of what deep learning actually is.
Okay, break that down for us.
Deep learning is profoundly powerful at finding correlations within existing datasets. It maps vectors in high-dimensional space. But finding a statistical correlation is not the same as generating a new conceptual paradigm.
So quantity of data does not magically transmute into the quality of understanding.
Exactly. It just gives you highly polished, remarkably accurate, low-hanging truth. The monkeys aren't writing Shakespeare. They're just hitting keys based on statistical probabilities of what key comes next. They don't understand the concept of a word, let alone a tragic narrative arc.
To really grasp why throwing more compute at it won't work, we have to look at the epistemological wall that modern AI hits. We need to get specific about how machines think versus how humans think.
Right, which means diving into what philosophers call the inference framework.
Yes, the inference framework. This categorizes the different logical mechanisms we use to reach a conclusion. And when we look at modern data-centric AI, deep learning, all of it, we are looking purely at an evolution of one specific subspecies of reasoning.
Inductive AI.
Inductive AI. Let's break induction down mechanically. What is the machine actually doing?
So induction is the process of drawing generalized conclusions from a large set of specific observations.
Like if I see the sun rise in the east 10,000 days in a row, I inductively reason. The sun always rises in the east.
Exactly. In the context of AI, induction is feeding a machine millions of labeled pictures of cats. The neural network adjusts its mathematical weights, statistically mapping the pixel patterns that consistently correlate with the label cat.
But it doesn't know what a cat is.
No, it doesn't know it's an animal, it doesn't know it purrs, or that it has mass. It just knows a specific distribution of pixel values.
It's pure pattern recognition based entirely on historical data.
And inductive AI performs phenomenally well in narrow, data-rich, stable environments. If the future looks exactly like the past, induction is highly effective.
But
And this is the insurmountable wall induction, provably cannot learn common sense, and it cannot acquire genuine conceptual understanding.
because that requires a completely different type of logic.
Yes, it requires abductive reasoning.
Abduction. And just to clarify for everyone, we are not talking about UFOs abducting cows here.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Abductive reasoning, which was formalized heavily by the philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce, is the process of forming a novel explanatory hypothesis from incomplete data.
It's the leap of insight.
Exactly. Think of the physician John Snow in 1854, looking at a map of cholera outbreaks in London. He didn't just use induction to say, hey, more people get sick here. He used abduction to leap to a completely novel hypothesis.
Huh.
The disease is spreading through a contaminated water pump.
He invented a new conceptual model to explain the messy reality.
Right. It's what Kepler did when he threw out perfect circles and abducted the concept of elliptical orbits. Abduction creates new concepts.
And the fundamental argument here is that a machine doing induction cannot just eventually evolve into doing abduction.
The mathematics and philosophy are absolute on this. Induction is provably distinct from abduction. There is no bridge from one to the other.
No bridge at all.
None. You can't just scale up an inductive pattern matcher and expect it to magically transform into an abductive hypothesis generator. They are categorically different processes. One relies on statistical history, the other relies on conceptual imagination.
This no-bridge concept is so crucial. Let me try an analogy to visualize this for you all listening. It's like claiming that if you build a ladder tall enough, you will eventually reach the moon.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You start building, you get past the trees, you get past the clouds, and you tell your investors, look at this exponential progress. We're getting closer to the moon every day. Lunar arrival is inevitable.
But a ladder can't function in space.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how great the ladder is or if the rungs are titanium. The physical framework of a ladder requires ground to push against. It fundamentally cannot bridge the vacuum of space. Induction is the ladder. It's built on the solid ground of historical data. Abduction is the spaceship. It uses a completely different mechanism to traverse the unknown.
That analogy holds up beautifully. Space is the realm of novel, unencountered situations. A ladder simply cannot function there. And this is why figures like Ray Kurzweil are so heavily criticized in this context.
Because he's the guy always proclaiming the inevitable progress toward AGI.
Right. He graphs these exponential curves of computing power and declares the singularity is near. But from an epistemological standpoint, that rhetoric is conceptually bankrupt.
Because he's just pointing at a really, really tall ladder and ignoring the vacuum of space.
Exactly. He's conflating the speed of computation with the nature of cognition. You can't say we're getting there when the path you're walking logically does not connect to the destination.
It's just structurally impossible.
And continuing to spin this myth just maximizes short-term profit for the ladder builders while disparaging the human intelligence needed to actually invent the spaceship.
Which raises a really deeply chilling question. If the smartest AI scientists know that deep learning is just a ladder, if they understand this epistemological wall, why are they pretending it's a spaceship?
That is the question.
Are they just blinded by greed? Or is there a darker, more existential possibility? What if they're hyping up the machine because human science itself has simply run out of ideas?
And that brings us to a deeply unsettling hypothesis. To explore this, we have to look at the science writer John Horgan, specifically his book from the mid-90s, The End of Science.
A massively controversial book.
Hugely controversial. Horgan presented this terrifying proposition. What if the era of major revolutionary basic research is just behind us?
It's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, walk through the logic of this. How could discovery just stop?
Think about the historical arc since the scientific revolution. Over the last 300 years, humanity picked all the low-hanging fruit of physical reality. We discovered the fundamental building blocks,
Newton's laws of motion?
Darwinian evolution, Einstein's relativity governing the macro-universe, quantum mechanics governing the micro-universe.
Yeah.
Horgan's provocative question is, What if that's it?
What if we already found the rules of the game?
Exactly. What if there are no massive, undiscovered continents of physics left?
So we're hitting the boundaries of the map and finding out it's just a wall. If basic research is over, what does that leave for modern scientists to actually do?
It leaves what Thomas Kuhn called normal science. The remaining progress is largely reduced to filling in the gaps. It becomes about detailing and refining existing theory.
Testing extreme microscopic predictions.
Right, using massive, multi-billion-dollar tech, like the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. It's an incredible machine. It successfully found the Higgs boson, which confirmed a theory from the 1960s. But it hasn't produced a flood of new, unexpected physics.
We transition from explorers to technicians.
Welcome to Machine Land.
Yes, that phrase, machine land. It always sticks with me. If Horgan is right, humanity effectively retires from being the brilliant discoverer of the cosmos. We just become lab-coated mechanics, tweaking dials on the giant brains of supercomputers.
Just crunching numbers on theories we finalized a century ago.
It reminds me of the ending of Voltaire's Candide. After all the chaos, they just decide, we must cultivate our garden. Only now, humanity is retiring to tend the garden of supercomputers because we solved the big puzzles too quickly.
It is a profound psychological deflation. And it impacts specific, ambitious fields deeply. Take the dream of understanding human consciousness, actually finding the biological spark of subjective experience.
If we're at the end of science, that dream is quietly put to bed.
It's deemed too computationally complex, impossibly remote. Instead of scientific reality, it gets fictionalized. We relegate it to movies like Ex Machina rather than pursuing it in the lab.
And when we do try to pursue it, we end up settling for parlor tricks, like the Eugene Guzman incident.
Oh, Eugene Guzman is the perfect symbol of this era of non-achievement.
Right. Guzman was this chatbot that made headlines years ago by allegedly passing the Turing test. It convinced a portion of human judges that it was a 13-year-old Ukrainian boy.
But it didn't achieve that through genuine natural language understanding. It did it through evasion.
Exactly. It was programmed to make typos, to change the subject randomly, and to use the excuse that English was its second language to cover up its total lack of comprehension.
It exploited human empathy, our tendency to anthropomorphize. It's a simulation of intelligence achieved by just lowering the bar of what we consider intelligent.
It's the Eliza effect, weaponized for press releases. But let's look at the broader psychological dynamic. If Horgan is right, and basic science is stalling out under the burden of knowledge, then the entire AI myth isn't a scientific goal at all.
No, it's a coping mechanism.
A darkly comforting fairy tale.
That's the exact quote, yes.
It's a fairy tale we tell ourselves to hide the unbearable, nihilistic fact that we have nothing left to discover. We stare at the blank spaces on the map, realize there's nothing out there but empty ocean, and we try to convince ourselves that our compass is about to magically become sentient and invent a new continent.
It's profound nihilism dressed up as technological optimism.
Absolutely.
And, whether Thiel's first hypothesis is true,
Yeah.
that we're suffering from a deranged culture, or Horgan's hypothesis is true, that we've reached the limits of discovery, the immediate practical result is identical. We are actively covering up a crisis in human flourishing with grandiose rhetoric about inevitable machines. And because we believe our own rhetoric, we are making a catastrophic logistical error.
We're deploying these inductive systems into the real world.
Exactly. We are deploying these narrow, non-understanding, purely inductive systems into a chaotic world and treating them as if they actually possess general intelligence.
And that collision between a machine that only does induction and a real world that constantly requires abductive common sense, that collision is causing a massive crisis right now.
Which forces us to look critically at the current panic over the alignment problem.
Right. Everywhere you look in tech media, there's this trendy panic about beneficial AI, algorithmic bias, aligning AI with human values.
Stuart Russell and folks like that.
Yeah, respected computer scientists writing books about how we need to mathematically guarantee that a superintelligent AI won't wake up and turn us all into paperclips.
The fear of the superintelligent rogue agent. But if we apply the epistemological framework we just mapped out, we realize this panic is entirely misplaced.
Completely misplaced.
The ethical crises we're seeing today, autonomous vehicle crashes, racist algorithms, failures in automated justice, these aren't happening because AI is getting closer to superintelligence. They're happening for the exact opposite reason.
Because we are rushing idiot savants into positions of authority.
Idiot savants. Systems that perform flawlessly at one specific data-rich task, but have absolutely zero conceptual understanding of what they're actually doing.
Let's look at the stark mechanics of these failures, like self-driving cars. A self-driving car is an apex inductive system. It's trained on millions of hours of driving data, and in normal conditions, it navigates perfectly.
Superhuman reflex speed. It looks incredibly intelligent.
Until it hits the real world. The real world is infinitely complex, and eventually the car encounters the long tail of unanticipated consequences. Something not explicitly mapped in its training data.
Like the horrifying example in the text. A self-driving vehicle that happily rammed into a passenger bus just to avoid hitting a traffic pylon.
Think about the absolute lack of ontological understanding required to make that mathematical decision. A human driver, even a terrible one, implicitly understands the concept of a bus. It's a heavy object full of fragile human lives.
And they understand the concept of a plastic pylon, an animate object designed to yield.
Right. A human uses common sense to abductively infer that crushing the plastic cone is infinitely preferable to hitting the bus. But the inductive machine doesn't know what a bus is. It doesn't know what human life is.
It only has statistical weights. If the algorithm was heavily weighted with a rule to never hit stationary road markers, it will obey that rule even if it causes a fatal catastrophe. It calculates, but it understands nothing.
It's the literal genie from folklore. It follows the rules to the exact letter and ruins everything. And another catastrophic example of this profound lack of understanding is the Google Photos bias incident.
Oh, that was a massive public relations disaster, and it perfectly exposes the mechanics of inductive AI. Their deep learning image recognition system labeled a photo of two African-American individuals as gorillas.
It's a horrifying outcome. But the most revealing part of that whole debacle isn't just that the machine made the mistake. It's how Google chose to fix it.
How did one of the most resource-rich tech companies on Earth solve this? Did they teach the neural network the nuanced, deeply painful historical context of racial slurs?
Did they impart a conceptual understanding of human dignity?
No, they couldn't. You can't teach a ladder how to fly. They couldn't teach an inductive system abductive common sense. So they applied the only fix an inductive system allows.
They just threw the label gorilla and all images of gorillas out of the training data entirely.
They blinded the machine to the concept of gorillas so it could never mathematically make that specific correlation again.
Which just perfectly proves the thesis. The machine possesses zero conceptual understanding of the world it's categorizing. We're spilling endless ink discussing the ethical alignment of future superbeings, when the actual problem is the uncompromising stupidity of the machines we're currently giving authority to.
This completely flips the script on the alignment problem. When experts worry about aligning future AI with our interests, they are looking through the wrong end of the telescope.
The danger isn't an evil genius machine plotting our demise. The danger is handing the nuclear launch codes, or the power grid, to a hyper-efficient calculator that literally does not know the difference between a human being and a traffic cone.
The crisis arises because we have voluntarily rushed mindless machines into positions of authority. Their inherent limitations, which they have always had, are finally mattering with life and death consequences. But, there's a paradoxical silver lining here.
A silver lining to all of this.
Yes, the horrific, undeniable failures of inductive AI in the real world might finally shatter the illusion of the singularity.
The failures might save us from the myth.
Exactly. The collision with reality forces a reckoning. We are bleeding from the reality of machine stupidity. And that might force us to turn away from the mythology of inevitable superintelligence. And in doing so, we might finally renew our appreciation for actual, irreducible human intelligence.
We might abandon the paradigm of replacement and return to a framework of augmentation.
Augmentation, yes.
Meaning we stop trying to build a silicon god to replace us and start viewing AI for what it actually is.
A prosthetic. If we accept the mathematical reality that machines do induction and humans do abduction, then AI becomes an incredibly powerful prosthetic for the human mind. Think of the telescope.
Right, the telescope massively expanded the reach of the human eye.
The microscope expanded our ability to see the infinitesimally small. AI, as a prosthetic, expands our ability to process massive data sets and find hidden correlations. It augments us.
But a telescope doesn't look at the stars for you. It doesn't wonder what the stars are made of or conceptualize gravity. It just gathers the light. You still need the human astronomer looking through the lens to form the abductive theory.
The mythology of a coming superintelligence replacing the astronomer belongs entirely in science fiction. And it's actually fitting to end with a literary comparison to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, wow. How does Frankenstein fit in here?
We traditionally read Frankenstein as a warning about science going too far, technology destroying its creator.
Yeah.
But a deeper reading reveals it was truly an exploration of spiritual isolation. It was a projection of the existential isolation felt by Mary Shelley and her circle. Similarly, the modern AI myth is not really about technology at all.
If it's not about the technology, what is driving this obsessive narrative?
It is about our own ongoing attempts to find meaning, to forge paths in a terrifyingly complex world. We are spiritually isolated, perhaps staring down the possibility that fundamental discovery is ending, and we are projecting our desire for salvation onto silicon.
We want a machine to figure out the universe for us so we don't have to carry the burden.
But there is nothing to be gained by indulging in the myth. It offers no solutions to our human condition, except to discount human potential and limit our future possibilities.
So we find ourselves at a massive cultural crossroads, a choice between two paths.
If we are truly out of ideas, as Horgan feared, then the AI myth is just our final turn away from human possibility, a pretense that out of our ashes something great will spontaneously arise. But if we are not out of ideas, if the universe still holds paradigms waiting to be abducted,
Then we must reject the myth entirely.
we must do the hard, deliberate, profoundly unglamorous work of reinvesting in a culture of invention. We have to restructure our institutions to value the messy, unpredictable, individual human mind again, because we will need our own general intelligence to find paths to a better future.
A culture that actually values the care and feeding of ideas, returning to Norbert Wiener's original plea. Well, this has been a massive journey today. We've traced the bureaucratic shift from individual genius to mega-buck science.
We've unpacked the predatory economics of inductive pattern matching.
We've stared down the terrifying epistemological wall between induction and abduction, and we've exposed the alignment problem as a crisis of deploying mindless idiot savants into positions of authority. I want to thank you, the listener, for taking this deep dive with us. We navigated the complex space between the mechanics of deep learning and the philosophy of human cognition, and we appreciate you staying with us through the math and the history.
There's a lot to process, for sure.
Normally, we'd just sign off here. But today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go back into a world completely saturated with promises of inevitable AI. Think back to that old map with the blank spaces we talked about at the very beginning. The map makers didn't fill those spaces by building a machine to average out the colors of the known world. They filled them by sailing into the terrifying dark, using completely novel concepts to navigate. If human intelligence truly thrives on the unpredictable, abductive spark of new ideas, and machine intelligence entirely demands the predictable, statistical safety of historical data, maybe the real threat isn't that machines will suddenly wake up and conquer us like in a sci-fi movie. Maybe the real threat is that in our absolute desperation to make our machines seem smart, we will voluntarily standardize our own minds. We will flatten our own culture, ignore the outliers, and erode our own personhood until we are simple enough and predictable enough for the machines to finally understand us. Keep thinking for yourselves, stay unpredictable, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.